Okay, welcome to this recording. We're going to have a look at a bit of basic mathematics, so the standard maths operators. We're going to have a look at how they affect the different types of variables that are created. We're going to have a look at random numbers and how we use those, and we're going to have a look at for loops. We're going to split this over two videos. So this first one is just going to be about basic maths operators, and the second one will be about loops and random numbers. Okay, so let's get going. So I've already typed a little bit of this in. Just a quick summary of where we're at. We're using the print command. So print is a function. Why is it a function? Because there are parentheses after it. What are the arguments that we pass into the print function? It's whatever's in the parentheses. So it's a string, a bit of maths. Why is it a string? Because it's in quotes. So obviously prints the words a bit of maths. Then we print, enter a couple of numbers, and we get the user to type in two numbers, and the input function scans for those two numbers. Notice the input function here. Why is it a function? Again, it's got parentheses, and we're passing an argument, which is the string. Please enter the first number. So the input function is quite clever. We can pass it an argument, and it prints that bit of text, and then it puts the cursor at the end of the line. And that's why we've left this little space here. So when the cursor comes at the end of the line, it's not hard up against the letter R. It actually gives us a little bit of space. And whatever we type in, obviously is put into the variable num1, and the second number that we type in is put into num2. So pretty straightforward. So we want to do some additions, and I'm just going to create something called sum. Now you'll notice if I type sum and hit return, it stays purple. Why is that? It's because sum is a reserved word. It's a function or some operator in Python, so I can't use that as a variable name. So I need to think add will do for addition, and I'm just going to assign the value add the result of adding num1 and num2 together. And you'll notice my preference for putting spaces in there because it leaves makes it just look tidier. It's not required. Python's not looking for spaces in there, but we'll put that in there. So we're just going to run this. I've already been messing with this, so I've already saved it as maths.py. So when I run, it'll prompt me to save, but it'll run straight away. So please enter the first number 4 and the second number 5. And oh, okay, didn't do a great deal. So to add the two numbers together. Of course, I didn't print it, did I? So what do I need to do is print. I need to tell the result of my sum, so I need to say num1. So I need to print the variable num1, and then I want to print the plus sign, and then the variable num2, and then I want to print an equal sign, and then I want to print the result of that, which is obviously the variable sum. Okay, so print one variable, then a string with a plus in, then another variable, and a string with an equals in, and another variable. Everything's separated by commas. Okay, so that looks good. Let's just run that. So please enter the first number 4, second number 5, and 4 and 5 is 9. So the answer is built-in function sum. Okay, what's going on there? So it's run, it's printed, it's not thrown any errors, and it's done what we said. So it's print sum being a built-in function. What's going on there? Looking at my code, oh blooming it, I called my variable here add, didn't I? And I've called it sum here, but it didn't throw an error because, as we said, sum is actually a built-in built into Python. I'll be honest, I don't actually know what it is, but it obviously was already built in, so it didn't throw an error, but it certainly didn't do what we want. So that's a semantic error where the program doesn't throw any actual errors, but clearly it didn't do what we want, and that's just because I called the variable the wrong thing there. So let's run this again. Third time lucky, and I want to add 4 to 5, and the answer is obviously 9, and the answer is, oh my goodness, the answer is 45. What the hell is going on here? How can 4 plus 5 be 45? Well, the more astute amongst you will have noticed my error straight away. What's actually going on there is, oh, I don't want to bring up that controller. Sorry about that. What's going on here is because when we've inputted the two numbers, these are returned as strings. So num1 is the string for and num2 is the string 5. So when we add 4 plus 5 here, we're not actually adding them as numeric variables, we're adding them as strings, and the plus sign becomes concatenation. It adds the two strings together. So add actually contains the string 4 added to the string 5, which is a string 4 5, and that's what we print down here. That's obviously not what we wanted to happen, and for those who can remember, what we really need to do is we need to convert the numbers that have been inputted as part of the input function into integers. So we call the int function to do that. So num2 is assigned the return value from the int function when we pass it the argument num2. So now what will happen is num1 and num2 are in here as strings. They both get converted into integers, and they get put back into newly created variables that just happen to have the same label. So now num1 and num2 at this point are integers. When we add them, they should be added together, and this should be an integer as it's displayed. So let's just check that that all works. So we'll stick with 4 and 5 because it didn't work before. 4 and 5 is 9. Hallelujah. So we've got our basic addition. And you can see that just to do addition, you've got to be careful. You know, this will work if these are both integers or other types of numbers that we'll look at later. But if they're strings, it just concatenates them together. So what other type of mathematical functions are available? Well, as you'd expect, there are the 4 basic maths functions. Let me just copy this line and paste it in 3 times. So as well as add, we've obviously got subtract, we've got a multiply, and we've got a divide. And our operators, as you expect, for subtract are the minus symbol. For multiply, it's actually the star symbol, which is shifted on a Windows keyboard, and the divide, it's a /, as opposed to a backslash, which is that one there, that goes the other way. So it's a / like that. And what we'd like to do is obviously just print all of our sums out. There's no point calculating it if we don't actually do it. So we need to print what happens as a result of minus, what happens as a result of multiply, and what happens as a result of divide. Obviously now I need my right variables here because subtract is a result of my division, mul is a result of my multiply, and div is a result of the division. Okay, let's run that, see what happens. And let's just bring the shell window up a bit so you can see. Grab the top there. Bring the shell window up a bit. Just managed to full screen it. There we go. So we're back to our first number. We'll stick with 4 and 5 because we've been playing with those. 4 and 5, so 4 plus 5 is 9, brilliant. 4 minus 5 is -1, so yes, integers can store negative numbers, that's pretty straightforward. 4 5s are 20, and 4 divided by 5 is 0.8. Well, no surprise there on the maths. But let's have a little think. What's the result of this division? It's not an integer, it's not a whole number, it's a 0.8, and we call this a floating point number. To understand what Python's done with that, what we're going to do is after each of the functions, after each of the results, we're going to print a statement saying is of type. So we're going to print that text, and then we're going to call the type function and pass it the result. So let's just copy this statement here and paste that in onto our 4 lines to see what's going on. Obviously when we're printing sub, we want to know what the type of variable sub is, we want to know what type of variable mult is, and we want to know what type of variable div is. So all it's doing is it's printing exactly what before, then it's printing the string is of type, and then it's printing the result, the return value of calling the type function. Why is it a function? It's got parentheses. And what's the argument we're passing to the type function? It's the variable add. So it tells me what type of variable this is. So we'll run module again. I get a bit bored with 4 and 5, so we'll go for 5 and 8 this time. So 5 and 8 is 13, 5 minus 8 is minus 3, 5 8s are 40, and 5 over 8 is 0.65. That's good. But notice we've now got this extra bit on the end of our output which says is of type, which was our string, and then it tells me this is what's returned from the type function. It's telling me that this variable here that's giving me the value 13, which was add, is of type int. Of course it is. Add two integers together and you get an integer. If you subtract two integers, you get an integer. Even though it's a negative integer, it doesn't matter. We can these cope integers with positive and negative numbers. If you multiply two integers together, you get, funny enough, an integer. So as these variables are created, they're all created as type ints. So the return value from the maths function returns an int, therefore the variable is created as an integer type. But you'll notice when we do 5 over 8 and we get a floating point number, it's of class float. So this is a new numeric type that can cope with floating point numbers. Floating point numbers are the way that inside a computer we represent anything that's has got a decimal point in it, basically. Just one thing to watch out for that catches a few people out. If we just rerun it, and I'll just put in a couple of particular numbers here. So I'm just going to do 10 and 10. Well, obviously I'm not bothered about the other maths, but 10 divided by 10 is 1.0 of type float. That's a bit weird because 10 over 10 is actually 1. So surely it should go into an integer. Well, yes, it should, but the people who wrote Python thought, you know what? When we do a division, the result is highly likely to be a floating point number. So whenever I see a division happening, the result variable that I'm going to create will be of type float, and because it's of type float, it actually prints it as 1.0. But obviously its numeric value is 1. It just is displaying it as 1.0 because it's a float, and it's reminding us that it's a floating point number. And you'll have to play with it, but there's different things we can do with ints and floats. Sometimes we have to do type conversions and things like that, but just be aware of those. So those are the basic maths operators that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but there are another couple just to look at. So I'm just going to get rid of those two because I don't want them anymore, and I'm going to have a look at the double kind of divide sign. We'll worry about what that is in a minute, and the percentage sign. So I'm not going to tell you what these are at the moment. I'm just going to call them Miss1 for mystery 1 and Miss2 for mystery 2. Because we don't know what they are. We're going to figure it out. Obviously, if you do already and you're listening to this with somebody else, and don't tell them the answer. Let's see if they can figure it out as we go through here. So we're just rewriting these equations so that they print out our new calculations. Miss1 and Miss2. And I'm actually not interested in what type these are because they will be integers anyway. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, so we're now getting our two numbers again, and we're doing this double divide or whatever it means and a percent sign, returning two new values, and we're going to print them out. So let's run that and see if we can figure out what's going on. So I'm just going to put some random numbers in here. I'm going to put maybe 8 and I don't know, 5, see what happens. Okay, so 8 double divide 5 equals 1. I'm not sure what that is. And 8% 5 equals 3. So are you aware of a mathematical operation that we could do which would take 8 and do something in 5 and return you a value of 1? 8 with a value of 5 and return a value of 3? I don't know, let's just try another option. Let's put some different numbers in and see if we can see anything here. We'll try 10 and I don't know, say 3. So 10 something 3 is 3 and 10 something 3 is 1. Okay, if you haven't got it at this point, I suggest you stop watching the video, go and play with it. Go and have a look at the numbers and see if you can work out what's going on. Just try incrementing and decrementing the numbers. If you've got it already, then great. If you stop watching the video and you've come back to us now and you want the explanation, that's what we're about to do. We're going to explain it. So what the double sign is, it's what we call a floor division. It's basically a whole number division. How many times does 5 go into 8? It goes in once. How many times does 3 go into 10? It goes in 3 times. So I'm not interested in the remainder in that case. It's just a whole number division, or we call it the floor division. The other thing is actually the remainder having done the floor division. So having divided 8 by 5 and got 1, what was left? The answer was 3. So this percentage sign is the remainder, or we call it the modulus. So 8 mod 5 is 3. It's the remainder after doing the division. Similarly down here, 10 mod 3, well obviously 3 goes 3 times into 10, taking 9 up, so the remainder would be 1. So 10 mod 3 gives me the value 1. So these are actually quite useful operators in Python. We actually do use them a lot in maths if we're doing security and encryption and things like that. Modulus is quite important, but it's actually quite useful as you're counting through numbers, maybe to pick out every third number or every fourth number, and we can use the modulus function to do that. Okay, so that's the first bit of the video over with, explaining some basic maths functions and watching out for types. Have a play with it, get some inputs, try some maths, use the type function to see what's generated, see what you can do with integers and floats, see if you've got to do any typecasting, i.e. changing the type to make things work. Okay, thanks for watching.